Mornings, Center for Spiritual Living Delaware, and our friends on Facebook, old and new. I'm Marcy Knox, and I'm your reader for today. With a blink of an eye, it is now September. I find it hard to believe. Our theme for this month is Reaching Higher. Since consciousness is the foundation of reality, the possibilities for new thoughts, insights, and discoveries is unlimited. Infinite possibilities are part of our makeup. Events prove anything can happen. Deepak Chopra. Let's not struggle with the past anymore. Let's forget the past and live in the eternal presence of God's smile. Today is a good day. Tomorrow will be even better. And the panorama of tomorrows that spans the bright eternities of the infinite future will be totally good because the nature of reality cannot change. Ernest Holmes. Please join me in reading our affirmation for today. I believe in myself because I believe in God. And now I would like to bring back Reverend Kathleen Johnson, Reverend Dr. Kathleen Johnson.
You're not going to drop it? All right. Maybe it another way. Okay. Go for it. All right. Thank you, Michelle. Sorry. We had to get me lined up and spotlighted, so thank you for your patience, everybody. Reaching higher. Love this theme. So not only is that the theme for the month, but it's the topic for today, reaching higher. So I'd like to begin with something that our friend Steve Behrman, aka Swami Byandananda, once said. He said, as you know, there are two kinds of mystics. There are optimistics and there are pessimistics. The pessimistics say that the sky is falling, and the optimists say, no, the sky is not falling, we are ascending. It only looks that way, my friends, because we are truly ascending. So, last month we gained clarity on the value of pausing for guidance, a time to refresh, to rejuvenate, a time to get still and listen for direction for the next ascent of our movement up the spiral of conscious evolution. And so I have more fully embraced. In fact, at one point in time, had an app on my phone set to prompt me with some gongs to get up and move every hour. I have it now to 30 minutes. And I have found that pausing, breathing, relaxing, centering myself, and I'd stand up and center myself. And then once I do that, I actually get down into child's pose and put my head on the ground, and then I listen very deeply for what, any guidance that is coming through at that time. I found this enormously helpful in preparing my messages as I gain insight more quickly, and which means I prepare my messages more quickly. And so this practice of stopping, pausing, and listening, we want to carry that forward into this month and forward beyond that, because it's such an important practice. It's actually mindfulness meditation. So this month, the focus is on ascension, ascending in consciousness, ascending up the spiral of conscious evolution, reaching for a higher perspective, a higher understanding of who we are and our place in the universe, and also the amazing opportunities that we have then when we draw upon this field of infinite possibilities to come up with innovative solutions, not only for our own personal lives, but for the collective whole, because of the deep interconnection of all life. So I just want to start by giving a little bit of background on the ascension process as it takes place in the New Thought, Science of Mind, and Ancient Wisdom communities and movement. The New Thought movement started back in the 1850s. This was the birth of, came out of the birth of the Transcendentalism movement and the interest in weaving together Eastern and Western spiritual philosophies, and also coming up with practical solutions for what was going on in people's lives at the time, which was that the doctors of the time were very erratic and sometimes more harmful to the patients than good. And so there was a call for a way to heal the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body through spiritual means. And there were people like Phineas Parkhurst Quimby who rose to the challenge and discovered the mind-body connection and began to use the very first forms of affirmative prayer, which we now call spiritual mind treatment, in a way to support the transformation of consciousness in the client, or we call them the patients, and result in what seemed to be miraculous and amazing physical healings. And so that was the first evolution, or the first ascension of the New Thought movement, physical healings through the power of the mind. The next evolution is that these same spiritual principles of the transformation of the mind were applied to every aspect of our personal lives. That was the next evolution. So it wasn't just physical healing, but it was career, relationships, financial well-being, all of those different areas of life. And then the next evolution, the next ascension of the New Thought movement took place. And that's where we began to apply the principles to transformation of the consciousness of all of humanity. So if you think of the work of Barbara Marx Hubbard, of James Twyman, Neil Donald Walsh, Lynn McTaggart, and also John Randolph Price. There was a great intention to use a collective focus on transformation of human consciousness with amazing results. And so our current attention now encompasses all of that, but adds to it a focus on dismantling the consciousness of separation. That means dismantling racism and every form of what's called othering, where we see another person who is different from us in a way that is not so loving. So it's about transforming all of that, so that this thing that we call oneness consciousness can more fully emerge in our awareness, in our consciousness, and in our relationship with one another. So it's diversity, inclusion, are some of the directions that we're going now as a movement, and also standing up for the issues on the planet, like the health and well-being of the planet's environment and so on. So today is about the value of reaching higher in consciousness for a higher perspective, the value of bringing into our spiritual practices a practicing of a higher, living into a higher vision of our lives. And again, all of this is for the purpose of not only bringing more peace, joy, and love to our own lives, but being the solution, being the ones who bring the solution, bring the light, bring the love to the planet, to humanity, and to all beings that are on the planet. And boy, is this being called for right now, and boy, is this an amazing and a wonderful thing to be devoted to as a movement. So let's first take a look at reaching for a higher perspective. You know, when you focus on the world from the viewpoint of the five senses, your perspective makes all the difference in the world. So if your perspective is from a place of oneness and the interconnection of all of life, there's awe and wonder at the beauty and the miracle of life itself. That's a great, exalted, blissful state. However, if the perspective is separation, which we were just talking about a minute or so ago, then there is a tendency to look for what's wrong, to blame, and to judge things as good and evil, good and bad, right and wrong. And that creates a lot of suffering. And that separation consciousness or duality way of looking at life is what gives rise to all of the suffering and the ills that we see on the planet. So we know that that's what needs to be transcended. Ernest Holmes said, "We experience good and evil because we perceive a presence of duality instead of unity." He also addressed the concept of karma, and basically said that so-called bad karma was the outpicturing of false thinking. So, you know, again, it all begins within our own minds. And he said the only way to escape it is to think the truth, to focus on the truth of all there is one life, one source, one presence, one power, and I am that one life, and to be aware of the interdependence and the interconnection of all life. So calling here, and here's the thing, this is not just about the word bad karma, but it's also good karma. So calling something bad karma or even good karma is just another way of staying in duality, separating ourselves from the perspective of oneness. So how about the use of good? You know, because we say good all the time, the greater good, you know, God is good in our teachings. So what's the difference here? Well, the difference is when we're talking about good in this context, it's an attribute, or actually another name for God, for the one unified field, the one universal intelligence. It has no opposites. This definition of good has no opposites. And so it is this perspective of good with no opposites that really shifts and changes our perspective on life, but also helps us to come from a higher place when we're meeting the challenges of life. So let me give you an example of something that just I just experienced recently. Actually, Dan and I both experienced recently when we were in Canada. When we arrived in Calgary, the sky was filled with smoke from all of the wildfires in the whole Alberta region. And so you might be thinking, and I'm sure we were thinking at the time, oh, this is not good. You know, there was a judgment there. This is not good. And so on our way to our lodge in Lake Louise, we stopped in Banff, had some lunch, and then the rain started coming down. And then you might be thinking, oh, this is good. Kind of reminds me of that Buddhist allegory about this is good, this is bad, you know, labeling things and finding out there's good basically in everything. So then the rain began to fall. And so here's the thing. If you're a tourist and you're wanting to enjoy the outdoors, you might be saying rain. Oh, rain is not good. I don't like the idea of rain. And so you might label it as bad. However, if you're a homeowner and you live in the region, then you're probably saying, oh, the rain is good. So do you see the challenge of this? It's all, this idea of good and bad is all from the perspective of the person that's looking at it. Now, the rain, we know, is a natural part of this amazing, wonderful planet. And yes, the rain did put out the fires over the next week that we were there. The rain did clear the skies. And also we noticed when we entered the national parks that the sign, which started off as extreme danger, they had this like little scale that they could move an indicator up and down. And the top said extreme fire danger. Well, by the end of the week, it was all the way down. It worked its way down to low because of the rain. And so, there was a purpose that was unfolding before our very eyes. So the rain, being a natural part of the cycle of life, has that so-called absolute good without opposites to it. It's part of the way the planet functions and nourishes the soil and the plants and the animals. And so we began to take a look at how we were viewing things and embrace the rain as we were hiking and so on. And then what we did is we then took a boat ride on this huge lake that's in the Jasper National Park region called Lake Moline. And the person on the boat, the tour guide on the boat, had just spoken with some great wisdom keepers, the First Nation people, explaining, getting the bigger picture of how things worked. And so what was explained to her was that in the Canadian Rockies, if you look up on the mountains, the sides of the mountains, you see mile after mile after mile of lodgepole pines, very tightly together, and you really don't see much other diversity except maybe along the fringes of the roads. So the fires have a natural way of thinning out those lodgepole pines and opening up space for diversity. And when there's diversity of vegetation, there's more food for the animals and therefore more diversity of animal life. Then the other thing that we noticed, Dan pointed out, well, how about all of those pines that look like they're reddish brown? They're obviously dead. And she said, well, that's the pine beetles. And the pine beetles have the same function, to thin out the trees, make room for more diversity of both plant life and wildlife. So wow, taking a look at all of these things that we judged as bad, on some level, we didn't say, oh, that's bad, but there was some thought of, oh, that's not very attractive, those areas where obviously the trees were burned and those trees that look like they're dead. But the point is there's a higher plan, and that's what we have to keep in mind about this amazing, beautiful planet and this thing called life. Is there's something else that's going on here that's supporting life. Now we're talking about natural things, and I know with humanity putting plastic and that kind of thing, those are things that we need to look into. But in terms of things that are natural, these are ways that the planet balances itself and brings and allows diversity to flourish. So that's oneness consciousness. realizing the interconnection of all life, realizing the wisdom of Mother Earth as an expression of God, and therefore that the rain, the fire, and the pine beetles are not good or bad karma. Excuse me. They are playing a part in the unfolding greater good. And I have a tickle in my throat. Do you have some water, Michelle? Excuse me. So that does not mean that we show a lack of compassion for people who are affected by the rain and the fires. People who lose their homes, and maybe lose lives and that kind of thing. So this oneness consciousness allows for us to see that there's a bigger picture going on, but at the same time to show compassion and to take action to support those who are suffering. And so that means being a part of the solution. So let me give you an example. Some years ago, not too long ago actually, the CSL Paradise out in California burned down from a wildfire. And many of you may remember that. And so what we did as a community is that we gathered we took an extra offering for that day. And then we were able to send a pretty sizable check to CSL Paradise in support, and other CSLs did that as well. And I know there are many, many other opportunities to support whatever's going on in the planet, whether it's the results of the hurricane and the flooding, all different kinds of climate change or forest fires. We have opportunities to extend our love and our compassion. And when we do it from this place of oneness consciousness, we do it without declaring things as good or bad karma or as good or evil, but simply from a desire to be a supportive presence. So think about your own life. What have you judged as bad? What have you judged as maybe bad karma? Think about that. Are you willing to take a higher perspective? And what would that perspective be? Think about that. And then coming from love and compassion, what could you contribute to be a part of the solution? So this development of oneness consciousness then is what we're looking at next. Reaching for a higher vision of ourselves living as that oneness consciousness in a world that is often very caught in duality. Deepak Chopra reminds us that since consciousness is the foundation of reality, the possibilities for new thoughts, insights, and discoveries is unlimited. Infinite possibilities are part of our makeup. Events prove anything can happen. We've seen this. We've seen examples of solutions and great innovations to things that seemed like they were impossible to solve. And so this is where, again, coming from oneness consciousness, we look at we live as possibilitarians. We live as people who know and have a great belief in ourselves to come up with solutions. And so the practice to get ourselves into this mindset, or to embody it more fully, the first one is mindfulness. And the mindfulness practice then is a practicing of living in the now, which means also rising above circumstances, It means constantly paying attention to the present moment as it is, free of judgment, free of opinion, free of expectation, and open to accepting what happens. So from this place of non-judgment, then we rise beyond what seemed to be. So remember the Beetles and the fires and the rain. What seemed to be, we rise above that to the awareness of the perfect unity of life, the perfection of life, the way it's designed. And in this way, we more easily detach ourselves from the ups and downs of duality, good and bad, right and wrong, and thus choose more consciously the life experience that we wish to have. And also we can more fully tap into the field of all possibility and all potentiality to come up with solutions. So let's practice that for a moment. I'd like you to sit up straight. Close your eyes. Rest the body and the mind as completely as you can. And contemplate your thoughts as they arise without judging them, without denying them. Just simply watch them rise and fall. Let them appear and disappear. And I'm just going to give you a minute or so to practice this. Okay, when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back. Just that simple couple of minutes allows the brain to be more integrated, allows more peace to flow through the body, allows you to be more open to the flow of creative possibility and potentiality, allows you to truly experience the miracle of life in the moment. This is the way that we cultivate oneness consciousness. This is the kind of thing I've been doing like every 30 minutes throughout the day. And I'm not asking you to do the same thing, but just stopping and pausing throughout the day has such value in helping us to ascend in consciousness. The next practice I'd like you to encourage you to do is the one that Candace did at the beginning of the service. There are variations of it. Joe Dispenza also has one called Walking Into Your Future Self. The idea is to practice being, living into this consciousness of oneness, living into those qualities of the divine: love, peace, joy, intelligence, wisdom, staying centered in challenging situations, and so on. So we can do that. We can practice that. That's something we can practice in our meditative process. So those are the practices. We know where we're going: oneness consciousness, being the solution. We know the practices of mindfulness and meditation, stepping into our future selves, is so powerful and so valuable, because we know that this amazing thing called life that we get to live is a gift. It's a gift that we receive, and it's a gift that we share generously. And it just blows my mind when I think of the amazing beauty and diversity and possibility that's available in each and every one of you, my friends. And I'm so grateful for that. And so it is.
And so it is.
And so I now would like to introduce you to Sharon again. Hi, Sharon.
Hello. I have an interesting little sign in front of my name. Do you guys hear me? Yes? I'm going to assume you hear me. So I was listening to this song, and I've listened to it about 100 times in the last 6 months because I found an extraordinary version that I just find so moving. But I had a little bit of a quandary that I sometimes run into in working in New Thought and looking at traditional worship type songs. And that challenge is in the word Savior. Even when I was a little